I'll let you introduce yourself.
Let's see, how does this clicker work? All right, cool. Hello, my name is Erica Siepker. I'm a conservation biologist and scientific diver from California. I'm here on behalf of Jody Salmon and Mark Gibbs, who unfortunately could not be here today. I've worked extensively with Reef Check California with kelp forests, but I'm really new to Reef Check Australia, so I can do my best to answer questions at the end, but there will be contact information at the end of the presentation if you want better and more in-depth answers to your questions. And I'm also going to be reading off of a script written by them, so my apologies for looking down. These are their words because it's very last minute, sort of, they swapped me in. So we got rebuilding the reefs of Peel Island, Moreton Bay, Queensland. Thank you for coming to this presentation. As we know, there is a lot of reef restoration occurring within the Great Barrier Reef, so this is a great opportunity to showcase another region where reef restoration has great potential and importance in the long term. Our project focuses on Moreton Bay in southeast Queensland, in particular Peel Island. Over previous centuries, Moreton Bay hosted large expanses of vibrant coral reefs, as you can see here. These reefs have largely disappeared as a result of three processes. First being European colonization of what is now southeast Queensland. Many of the reefs failed to keep pace with rising sea levels and hence were slowly buried. Secondly, the remaining viable reefs were decimated due to targeted limestone extraction during the 19th and early 20th centuries. And mining and dredging activities that has now ceased. However, ongoing impacts of reduced water clarity and increasing sedimentation as a result of both episodic and ongoing resuspension of fine sediments deposited in the bay from agricultural and urbanized catchment runoff has led to the demise of all but two main reefs in the system. A report by the Queensland Museum, Wallace et al., 2009, identifies that the few remaining coral reefs in Moreton Bay are regarded as being close to environmental extinction. We believe this is even more relevant today. Reef Check Australia has been monitoring reefs along the Queensland coastline since 2001, in southeast Queensland since 2007, resulting in some of the longest running long-term data collection available for the region. After noticing changes in Moreton Bay, the increasing amount of siltation at certain sites, reef restoration activities were discussed, and in 2019, the planning began to look at the possibility of creating reef restoration research projects in Moreton Bay. And here's a map. As you can see, these photos are not as pretty and pristine as the ones previously. Peel Island is in, after noticing changes in Moreton Bay and the increasing amount of siltation at certain sites, I just read that one. Peel Island is an iconic place in Moreton Bay, steeped in both indigenous and European colonization history. Peel Island is now heavily used for recreational fishing, and the southwestern side, known as Horseshoe Bay, is the premier anchorage for recreational vessels. Surveys of the southern end of Horseshoe Bay undertaken by Reef Check Australia reveal remnant coral skeletons and rubble beds and sparse surviving coral colonies, demonstrating that this location once hosted a thriving coral reef community. The demise of coral reefs observed through levels of coral cover along the Queensland coast has been well documented. It is also well understood that this demise has primarily been a consequence of the increasing inputs of fine sediment runoff from catchments. It is also well recognized that the inputs of fine sediment into Moreton Bay have substantially increased since European colonization, and large flood events over the recent decade have exacerbated this. In the case of Peel Island, the flood plume from the Logan River flows northwards past Peel Island and represents an almost continuous supply of suspended fine sediments. In areas that have less flow, these fine sediments can fall out of the water column, smothering benthic organisms such as coral colonies. So the theory therefore suggests that under these new environmental/water quality conditions, coral colonies can only survive and prosper if they are elevated in the water column so that they can receive more light and are less vulnerable to smothering from fine sediments. The key research question then becomes, at what depth range will corals now prosper given the new environmental conditions? Horseshoe Bay is the premier anchorage in Moreton Bay, and on a typical summer weekend, over 100 private vessels can be at anchor. The site features a beautiful sandy beach, seagrass meadows, and a vegetated and unurbanized island. Restoring the reef on the western side of Horseshoe Bay could recreate the coral reef habitat and would lead to demonstrable ecological and amenity values. However, what is not clear is whether corals will be able to survive at this site in the current water quality regime that features reduced light penetration and increased suspended sediment loads. The overall purpose of this research project is therefore to ascertain whether this site can now support corals, and if so, at what depth range can corals now survive at. This project would be considered successful if, I feel like that's this one, yeah. If an understanding of the site is gained, is it suitable for restoration activities? Knowledge of the depth range in which transplanted coral fragments survive and thrive is determined. Local personnel are trained in research reef restoration techniques, including installation, demobilization, and monitoring of transplanted corals and structures, and increased community awareness of Moreton Bay coral reefs and their importance is generated. The degree of success of the project will be determined by the number and growth of survival of transplanted coral fragments at particular depths. So, the research project so far. This project is still in its infancy. Today's presentation is to show you where we are at and where we are headed. So far, we have conducted the following phases. First, establishment. The establishment phase consisted of gaining relevant approvals, institutional support, and undertaking an initial site survey at the site. Frames were fabricated on land from rebar and shell grit and were designed specifically to be much higher than existing designs on the market to test the effect of lifting the coral off the substrate and remove the impact of excess siltation. Structures were deployed to the site and allowed to condition over a period of several weeks. Once the structures were conditioned, teams went out and cleaned them ready for coral fragments to be attached. Opportunistic coral fragments were then selected. Our original sourcing reef was to be Goat Island. However, as you can see from these photos, the floods from early 2022 decimated the existing coral population. Results from our long-term monitoring showed a decline from over 40% hard coral cover to less than 4%. This removed Goat Island as a potential sourcing stock. 50 coral fragments were collected as opportunistic fragments from less affected areas around Peel Island. Both Acropora and Pasillopora were collected as they were numerous, opportunistic, and fast-growing. Of note, only already broken coral was used. We did not use those from colonies such as image 1 here. So only decimated coral such as image 2. This shows the fragments being made ready for attachment. Coral fragments were 7 centimeters or less, and metal was used to attach them in the hope of using less plastic than other projects. Corals were attached to the frames, labeled and measured. Each frame has a large number on it to make it easier for data collection and monitoring. We are now in the middle of phase 2, monitoring and maintenance. Fragments have now been on the structures for 9 months. The structures have been checked twice over this period to monitor siltation, algal growth, and survivability of the coral fragments. The frequency of the monitoring is heavily dependent upon weather and the availability of logistical support. High winds, rain, and flooding have resulted in several maintenance and monitoring trips being postponed or canceled due to safety concerns. Our results so far. We have approximately 90% survival of the coral fragments, higher than potentially first expected. The difference in height of the fragments does not seem to have an impact on the survivability. As all are lifted off the substrate by a minimum of 30 to 50 centimeters, this seems sufficient to ensure water movement and distance from excess silt. Passillopora seems much tastier than Acropora. All Acropora corals have survived and have shown no damage. That's the top row. All Passillopora fragments have evidence of predation, which is the bottom row. Jody informed me that they don't know exactly what is predating on the coral, and they might have to put a GoPro down there and figure it out. Several businesses, community groups, universities, and government agencies have shown an interest in the project and the potential for additional projects in the future. We have increased the number of people interested in reef restoration, in reefs in Moreton Bay, and in citizen science. This means, so far, the project is on schedule and a great success. We are thankful that we have received support from a variety of groups and volunteers, including the Moreton Bay Foundation, the Goodman Foundation, Science Under Sail, the Brisbane Airport Corporation, and SeaWorld Foundation to reach our site and assist with ongoing project costs. We are also extremely grateful for the myriad of volunteers who have assisted with any and all components of the project to date. This project is run on volunteer power and simply would not be possible without all hands on deck. As a citizen science organization, we understand the power of volunteers. A key goal of this project was to increase the potential for community members to participate in the program, and it has been exciting to see such a wide variety of people and backgrounds, and a strong passion to see the project succeed. So, what's next? This research project will continue for another 12 months, with a team deployed next week to check in on the survivability of the coral fragments and to deploy additional devices to monitor siltation. This project is still in its infancy, however, results so far are positive. Siltation and water quality remain the largest threats to reefs within Moreton Bay, and the increase in the occurrence and severity of weather incidents will continue to test the resilience of reefs in the region. With such a small number of reefs surviving in the region, we believe this project has great potential, and we look forward to sharing the final results with you in the near future. And for any questions, feel free to reach out to RCA, Reef Check Australia, and there's the email and a QR code right there.
Thank you very much. Does anybody want to ask a quick, not too taxing question? Okay.
Sure.
Oh, well, I think you're off the hook.
He had his hand right. I mean, I don't know if I can
no,
answer it, but I can do my best.
You're not off the hook.
I don't know whether it's not going to be taxing, but given what Austin just shared before, have you done any work around potentially if you can't do stuff at Peel Island, is there other bits of other areas in Moreton Bay where you consider putting these things?
I know that Reef Check has quite a few different projects going on, but yeah, I think to really answer that question, you might have to email them. I'm sorry.
That's okay. We'll let you off the hook now. Thank you very much.
Thank you.